In this video, we will show you how to create additional question sets and how we can add these question sets into an existing survey or send them out on their own. Let's take a look at an example survey. At the top, we have the title. The title will be shown to recipients of your survey and will appear at the top of every page in your question set. The title is a good way to indicate to your members what the subject and/or content of your question set is about. For example, a customer satisfaction survey. Below that, we have an image. We can add images throughout our survey, such as a banner that displays at the top. Note that the max file size is 10 megabytes, and the max dimensions are 1600 pixels wide by 1600 pixels tall. It is also optional to include a caption below your image. Next, we have a paragraph. This allows you to add additional instruction or explanation within your survey. Now let's take a look at the type of questions we can ask. First, we have long text. This allows your members to answer in a paragraph or long answer style answer. Next is the short text, which allows for us to enter in a short text answer. Below that, we have our single choice option, which, as you can see from the paragraph above, the other option allows members to type their answer in instead of having to select one of the options presented. With the single choice questions, logic can also be applied to redirect members to the next set of questions based on their answer. For example, if I chose the fitness answer, I can actually be taken to a list of fitness questions. Then you have your multiple choice, which in this case, we can go ahead and select all the answers that apply. The next few questions are all grid style questions. So as we go through, you'll see the first word is our grid. Then we pick what selection type we'd like to use for that grid question. So first one we see here is our single choice, allowing us to provide one answer for each row. Next is our grid multiple choice, meaning that we're able to select multiple answers for each row. Then you can also use grid text, which allows us to enter in our answers here. The grid number option allows us to enter in numbers for our response. And the grid date allows us to enter dates. Now, when it comes to the grid dates, we can actually click on the arrow on the right, and that's going to pull down the calendar for us to go ahead and choose our date selection. And lastly, we have the grid time, which allows us to enter in a time answer. The following two questions we have is our sliding scale, which allows us to set a minimum and maximum range for the user to slide their answer. And we have the star rating, which allows us to set a number of stars, with 10 being the max, where we can go ahead and provide our star rating. In order to create a question set, you must have the permissions to manage surveys. To access the questions, you're going to click on Settings, and then navigate over to Questions. If you'd like to work on an existing question set, simply click on the name of that question set and it will take you into edit mode. However, we're going to go ahead and add a new question set. At the very top, we have the question set name. Note that this is for internal use only. Below that, we can find the title of the survey. So, for example, the customer satisfaction survey. Then we have the introduction text. This is optional, but it can be used to tell the reader a bit more about what your questions will be asking and why you want them to fill them out. To encourage them to answer all the questions, you might want to let them know how long the survey will take. Note that this message will appear in the body of the email if we aren't using the MPS question, and if we are using the MPS question, it will appear after we've answered that. If we look below the introductory text, we can see that we have page 1 of 1. That means that we currently only have one page in our question set. And as you can see, our page is currently empty. To add content to your question set, you're going to click on the Add Content dropdown. In here, we can choose to add a question, image, or paragraph, and we're going to start by adding an image. So let's go ahead and select our image option. Then we're going to click Select Image, where we can drag our image into this Upload Image window, or simply click, and that will open your computer files. We can go ahead and select our image, click Open, and we'll apply that image. If you like, you can choose to change the alignment of your image, and you can also include a caption which will appear directly under that image. Once you're satisfied with your image, go ahead and click Done. Maybe we want to add some explanation text into our question set. To do that, we're going to go to Add Content, and we're going to choose the paragraph option. So all you have to do is type in your information. So this is my explanation text. Then, like with the image, once you're good to go ahead and click Done. Now let's go ahead and start adding questions to our additional question set. To do that, we're going to go ahead and click Add Content, and we'll select our question option. For our question type, you're going to go ahead and click on those arrows and choose what type of question type you'd like to use. For this one, we're going to demonstrate our short text. So you want to make sure you add in your actual question. So we can put, what do you enjoy most about the club? You'll see that just below that we have require an answer to this question checked off. That means that this question is mandatory and must be answered in order for the member to complete the survey. Now this will be marked off by default for each question you make. So if you don't want this question as mandatory, just make sure you uncheck that required box. Then, once we're ready to go with our question, we can click Done. Next, let's make a grid style question. So we'll go ahead and add in our question. And for the question type, we're going to choose Grid. Now, if you recall from the survey preview, we do have a few options that we can utilize for our selection type when it comes to the grid question type. In this case, we're going to go ahead and choose the single choice option. So we'll put in our question. How would you rate the following? And if we scroll down, the row will appear on the left-hand side of the question, where the column will appear across the top. So, for example, if we want them to rate, we can put, let's say, knowledge and experience of the instructors. Okay, click to add a new row, and let's say quality of the equipment. Then you'll want to set your columns. So, for example, we can have excellent, good, average, and poor. So this one, we'll leave that as requires an answer and save that question. And if I scroll down just a bit, here's what our question will look like. A neat question type that you might like to use is our star rating. So next, let's go ahead and add that one. So we'll add our question. And for our question type, let's choose that star rating. So we'll add our question. Say, how would you rate your dining experience? You can change the number of stars, with 10 being the max. Again, do we want this required? For this one I do, and done. Now let's take a look at how we can edit, delete, or copy an existing question. To edit on a question, you're going to hover over the right-hand side of that question and click the pencil icon. Or if you actually just click on the question itself, it will also expand to allow you to edit. To delete a question, we'll complete the same process, either clicking that pencil icon or clicking on the question itself, and you're just going to click the trash icon, which will allow us to remove that question. We also have the ability to copy an existing question. A scenario where you might want to copy a question can be if you want to ask the same question, but on a different page. So we're actually going to click Done. And to copy the question, you're going to hover over the far right-hand corner and click the little clone icon. Doing this will create that copy of the question for you. However, we don't need that copy right now, so why don't we go ahead and click that question, click that trash can, and we're going to delete that question. We can also rearrange the order of the questions as they appear on the page. To do so, we're going to go ahead and edit our question. Then you're going to click on the up or down arrow depending on where the question is within the page. So we can click that move up arrow, and that's going to move our question up for us. Or you can also click Done and simply click and drag your question. Since we have some questions already in our question set, maybe we decide that we want to add an additional page. Adding a new page is optional, and to do so, you're just going to look for that Add Page button at the bottom of your questions. Clicking that is going to open up that new page for us. Adding pages is helpful if you are creating a long question set, or you simply want to break down your questions into sections. Otherwise, all your questions can actually be added to the same page. Now, if you are utilizing multiple pages, it might be helpful to add a page title. To do so, we're just going to checkmark Add Page Title, and this title will appear on the specific page throughout your question set. Now, this is optional and only necessary if it's going to be a very long survey, because like with your additional pages, it helps break your survey down into chunks. So for example, this could be our dining questions. And just like with your questions, you can also change the order of your pages. Works the same way. We're going to look for that arrow on the page itself, and we can move that up or down depending on where it currently falls within our survey. If I scroll up here, right now when we're looking at our questions, we can see what question type we're currently asking because it shows us how the member will answer that question. But what you can do is click on these two little arrows where it says fold, and what that will do is it's only going to show you the actual question itself. So if you wanted to condense your question set and just look at what questions you're actually asking, go ahead and use that option. Then once you're done, go ahead and click unfold and it'll bring everything back for you. We're going to make one more example question type, and that's going to be our single choice, so we can go ahead and look at how to build logic into questions. When you do utilize the single choice question type, a member can actually be taken to a certain page within your question set with questions relative to how they answered that previous question. So for example, if the member went to the fitness department in their last visit to the club, it wouldn't really make much sense to ask them a bunch of dining related questions. These redirections are built directly into the question type. Note that it might be helpful to have your redirects in mind so you can add the total number of pages you will need prior to creating your question. However, you can always add these as you go. So before we build our question, let's go ahead and add 2 additional pages. So we'll scroll down. We're going to add a 3rd page as well as a 4th page. Now I'm going to add that redirect single choice to my first page. So we'll add content and our question, and we know this one is going to be a single choice. So for my question text, we're going to go with, what area of the club do you attend the most? In order to apply the logic to this single choice question type, we're going to checkmark the box, go to page based on answer. Then you're going to go ahead and start typing in your options. So maybe we have our dining facilities. Let's add in our golf facilities. And lastly, our fitness facilities. And for single choice, you do have the option of including other as an answer, which allows the member to type in their answer as opposed to choosing one of the options. Now beside our answers, you'll see continue to next page. This is where we set the redirect for the answer. So maybe for dining facilities, if they choose that option, we can have them continue to the next page. Golf facilities, we actually want them to go to page 3. And fitness facilities, we want them to go to page 4. That way, when you are creating your question set, you'd want to make sure that all your golf-related questions fall on page 3, fitness questions on page 4, etc. Because once we select that answer, we're going to be taken directly to that page. Then, just scrolling down here, we want to make sure that they do answer this question, so we'll leave that require as check, and click done. If you are using a logic-based question, you will want to set redirects for your pages as well. For example, if I selected the dining facilities answer, I would be taken to the next page, which has the dining specific questions. Now, once I finish those questions, by default, I'm going to go to our next page, which is actually our golf questions. Therefore, a redirect for the dining questions page should either go to a new page or be set to submit the form. This can be accomplished by clicking on the drop-down beside after page with the page number and choosing where you want your recipient to go after they've completed the questions on this page. So, as mentioned, we can go to another page, or maybe after they've completed the first page, then they've completed their dining questions, we actually want them to go ahead and submit the form. Now that we've added all the content to our additional question set, if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see we have a confirmation page. This message will appear after a member has completed the survey. There is text here by default, but you're more than welcome to go ahead and make adjustments. As you're working on your additional question set, you can definitely preview as you go along. So we'll find that preview option at the very top, so we're just going to switch to preview questions. you can preview your question set as you're building it and as many times as you like. So if we click on Begin, just to show you, if we scroll all the way down, note that we actually can complete this preview just like your members would. So when we actually select that logic answer, you'll actually be taken directly to the page that you've redirected to. But we're going to scroll back up, we'll go back to Edit Questions, and if we go back to the very bottom again, we have two save options. If you are finished, we want to select Save as Ready, meaning that this is the final version and indicates to other users that this question set is now ready to be attached to a survey. Now, if you accidentally clicked Save as Ready in error, you can always go back into that question set and you're going to switch to Save as Draft. Because Save as Draft means that we're not actually finished with our question set yet, and we still need to make some more edits to it. Having this question set saved as draft prevents the question set from being added to a survey. But since we're ready to go, we're going to go ahead and save as ready. And there we find our new question set. Existing question sets will have one of the following statuses. A draft status means that this question set has been created, but it's not ready to be used in a survey yet. Question sets that are set in draft status will never be sent in a live survey. Edits can continue to be made for any survey set in draft mode. The ready status means that this question set will be available in the drop-down in the survey section. Note that edits cannot be made to this question set. And lastly, we have the live status. This means that this question set has been set out in a survey. Note that edits cannot be made and the question set cannot be deleted. However, it can be copied to make modifications if needed. Other options you have on the screen include Preview, which will take you directly to the preview of the question set, Delete, which will allow you to delete the question set, and Copy, which will allow you to create a copy of the question set. Here we see an example of an NPS-only survey. The first step would be your membership receiving their email. Your members would go ahead and give this a rating. Once they do that, a browser window will open, asking them to provide any feedback that they may have and to click Send Feedback. Next, we see an example of an NPS survey that does include an additional question set. The initial process is the same, where we'll go ahead and select our rating. The next step allows us to provide any feedback that we may have. The difference here is instead of clicking Send Feedback, we now click Next, and that Next will open up our introductory text with a Next button, and this will lead your membership into the additional questions. If we have created a question set, and we're not actually attaching the NPS question to it, when a member receives their email, it'll look like what you see on the screen here, where our introductory text will actually appear directly in that email. Clicking that Take Survey button will then open the additional question set for us to complete. Now that our question set has been marked as ready, we can go ahead and attach it to a survey. So we're going to navigate over to Surveys, and we're going to use our one-off survey. So we'll select that option and add a new survey. When using an additional question set within a one-off survey, it is suggested to use the CSV upload when you are selecting your recipients. So if we click here, okay, you'll see that we can drag and drop to upload or select our file. And just note that your file must look like what you see here for an example, where we have that first name, last name, and email address in order for those contacts to be pulled correctly. So why do we recommend using a CSV file? Because the one-off survey will go to all the recipients in the CSV file. This way you can target a specific audience with a specific question set. Once you have your recipients, we're going to scroll down and click on your survey. Your next step is to actually add that question set into the survey. To do that, we're going to look for our Add Question Set dropdown. And the only question sets that we will see here are the ones that either marked as ready or live. Remember, if a question set is in draft mode, we won't be able to select it to add it to our survey. So we can go ahead and add our additional questions that we created. And then you want to determine if you're going to include the NPS question or not. Now note that we only have this option when using a one-off survey. When you are using an ongoing survey, such as your relational or your departmental surveys, you must include the NPS question. So if we look just up here, by default, the NPS question will always be included, okay, but you do have the option of turning it off. However, we do recommend always including the NPS question in your surveys. if you do want to turn it off, okay, you're just going to click that toggle button and that will turn off the NPS question. Now, if you do turn off the NPS question, we have 2 additional fields. And the first one is the email subject. Now, by default, it will actually set this similar to what our regular NPS question may be. So you're more than welcome to keep this, or you can change it based on what your question set is asking. The email subject is what is going to appear as the subject line when members receive this survey. The invitation message will populate from whatever message you used within the actual question set. So you can leave as is, or you can adjust it here. Because we didn't actually add an invitation message when we were creating our question set, we don't see a message appearing. As mentioned, you can add a question set to your relational or departmental surveys. However, we advise against it because the question set will now be attached moving forward until you remove it. And as mentioned, you also cannot turn off the NPS question. Also note that these 2 types of surveys will only go to 20% of your recipients, even if you manually upload a CSV file. So, the best option is to send this question to a specific group of recipients using that CSV file upload using a one-off survey. Now, before we finish and send our survey, if you like, you can actually send a preview of this survey before you send it off to your recipients. In order to send a preview, make sure you do complete all the fields, and then we do need to make sure we save that survey. I've actually already gone in and added everything I need, so we're going to click Save. And now that we've saved our survey, if we scroll up, we're going to switch to our preview survey option. Then, scrolling down the screen here, you are going to find yourself or whoever you'd like to send this preview to. Just click and drag their name, and go ahead and click Send Preview to selected user. Just note when the preview is received, it will say Preview directly in the subject line. Then, those recipients of the preview can go ahead and complete the survey just like your members would. The last thing we're going to take a look at is the report, because once a question set has been sent with the survey, we can view the responses. To see those responses, we're just going to navigate over to Reports, then we're going to go ahead and select Results. This will provide you with a CSV file, so go ahead and click that Export CSV, but just note if you do have pop-ups on your browser, okay, just click that pop-up blocker on the screen. Okay, we're going to allow the pop-ups, and done. So just one more time, we'll click that Export CSV, okay, and that will download the CSV file for you, which, as you see on the screen here, we can see our responses.